For years, Princess Beatrice remained a quiet, royal, dutiful, polished, and far from controversy. But now, she has broken ranks. In a moment that stunned courtiers and fractured alliances, Beatrice has spoken, and her words were not neutral. With her father, Prince Andrew, under siege, stripped of royal titles and cast into disgrace, Beatrice's sudden decision to speak out has sent shockwaves through the monarchy. Why now? And what price will she pay for defending the one man Buckingham once forgotten? Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. The silence had always been her armor. Beatrice, the discreet York daughter, the one who never stirred waves. Yet when her father was once again dragged under the harsh scrutiny of a royal reckoning, it wasn't Andrew who spoke, it was her. The timing wasn't just emotional, it was nuclear. Just days after King Charles confirmed the final revocation of Andrew's remaining titles, Beatrice released her personal statement, bypassing the royal press office entirely. It hit like a thunderclap. Not only was the crown unprepared, but insiders revealed that the palace had explicitly warned her to stay silent. That warning had been ignored. For the public, it was a moment of division. Some saw it as a daughter's fierce loyalty, others as a reckless defense of the indefensible. Yet beneath the surface, this wasn't just emotion, it was a strategic power move cloaked in raw vulnerability. "I cannot pretend my father does not exist," she wrote, a line that pierced the stoic royal tradition of silence and detachment. It was the sort of declaration not heard since the days of Diana, and from the leaked WhatsApp conversations circulating within elite royal watcher circles, it's clear that Beatrice had been planning her statement for weeks, perhaps even longer. One message, allegedly from a member of Princess Anne's staff, read, "I'm going to blow this thing open. We can't stop her." Advisors scrambled to manage the damage, fearing Beatrice had opened a door to dissent that could not be closed. They were right, because in defending her father, she didn't just reignite his scandals, she brought new questions about the monarchy's own selective memory and its willingness to erase. Emotional depth surged beneath every line she wrote. There was no denial, no deflection, only a heartbreaking confession of a daughter who refused to abandon her father, even if it meant burning her own path through the royal order. But her choice was never going to be personal. Not when her words carried the weight of a York bloodline still viewed with suspicion. The royal family, still reeling from past exiles and ruptures, now faced a fresh dilemma: how to contain a defiance born not from rebellion, but from duty twisted by love. And while the statement itself was brief, its impact was volcanic. It emboldened silent loyalists within the palace to start asking forbidden questions. Why now? Why this method? And most dangerously, what else is she willing to reveal? But this wasn't just a daughter's plea. It was a strategic, explosive move that reopened wounds the palace had tried to bury for good. Without public fanfare or televised announcements, the titles began to vanish. One by one, the honours, military affiliations, and formal address tied to Prince Andrew were removed. Yet behind this silent unravelling was a war, a bitter negotiation between image, legacy, and bloodline. And within that cold machinery, Beatrice saw something else. A message meant not just for Andrew, but for her too. There was no trumpet, no decree read aloud in the palace courtyard. Instead, the dismantling of Andrew's royal identity came through a sequence of quiet, methodical updates, removed insignias, erased web entries, revoked access. It was King Charles's deliberate design, an erasure not through public spectacle but through chilling finality. Advisors close to the king insisted on speed, desperate to limit backlash from Republican voices already sharpening their blades after the previous scandals. But the rush wasn't just about public perception, it was also about control. And within the crown's inner sanctum, Queen Camilla's influence was reportedly far more pointed than anyone dared admit aloud. Her camp, according to one senior aide, had urged the king to act with haste, before Beatrice or Eugenie could stir sympathy and delay judgment. And they were right to worry. Beatrice didn't need a spotlight to feel the sting, because when the news arrived, it came not through a family discussion or private assurance. It came via courier, a sealed letter, cold in tone, stripped of ceremony, bearing the official seal yet devoid of warmth. Beatrice, stunned, read the list of revoked honors and military appointments as if reading a verdict final, clinical, irreversible. But what cut deepest wasn't what had been removed, it was how it had been done. Not just to a father, but to a family. The York name, already marred by scandal, was now being scrubbed from history, piece by piece, and for Beatrice, that felt like execution without trial. Privately, she began reaching out to those who had once stood with Andrew in quieter times. Former courtiers, disillusioned aides, forgotten allies, all suddenly found themselves receiving subtle invitations from Beatrice, veiled as courtesy, but pulsing with urgency. The gatherings weren't formal, but their purpose was unmistakable. She was sounding the walls, testing for cracks in the Crown's narrative. If her father had been condemned, then she would not accept the verdict in silence. Not when the family hadn't even spoken to her, not when everything felt like a political maneuver cloaked in royal etiquette. Yet what few knew at the time was that Beatrice had already resolved to act. She had watched the way the monarchy dealt with dissent from Harry's exile to Meghan's obliteration, and she recognized the pattern, the soft exile, the quiet purge, the pretending they never existed. And now, she sensed it coming for her too. This wasn't just a punishment for Andrew, it was a warning shot across her own bow. Stay silent, or be next. But even as the titles fell, Beatrice refused to let her father be erased without a voice, and her next move proved she had no intention of remaining passive. There was a letter written not by Beatrice, but for her. Hidden within the palace corridors, it was a draft of a speech no one wanted her to deliver. A draft prepared months earlier, suggesting that the palace knew she might speak. But the version she ultimately released was far more devastating, and someone tried to stop it from seeing daylight. For all the silence that surrounded Beatrice, the palace was never naive. They had contingency plans, crafted words, and pre-approved sentiments carefully constructed to avoid scandal, emotion, or blame. Deep within the Royal Communications Office, a document existed sterile in tone, passive in content. It offered the illusion of acknowledgement without committing to defense. The draft portrayed Beatrice as neutral, emotionally distant, almost mechanical. She would express support for institutional processes, emphasize healing, and reiterate the monarchy's unwavering commitment to justice. It was, in every sense, a royal PR masterpiece, safe, dull, and soul-crushing. But Beatrice never signed off on it. What she released instead couldn't have been more different. When the actual letter was made public, it wasn't polished, it was powerful, it was not sanctioned, it was raw, and its core message made the palace shudder. I do not disown my father, nor will I pretend he is a ghost. It was an emotional rebellion against the Crown's carefully manicured silence. Every sentence throbbed with daughterly defiance. She didn't excuse his actions, she reclaimed his existence. That nuance, that pain, that humanity, it shattered the facade Buckingham had built. Within hours of the letter's release, the palace was in panic. Not just because of its content, but because someone had helped her. Several sources confirmed a frantic attempt to retrieve copies of the approved draft after a junior aide accidentally attached it in an internal reply-all email thread. That leak sparked a flurry of questions. Who had sent it? Who had deleted it? And more crucially, who had the access to feed Beatrice her father's final, unsanitized version? Rumors spread of a palace insider, someone high enough to see the drafts, low enough to sympathize, and brave or reckless enough to defy protocol. The revelation that Beatrice had rejected the official line was a scandal in itself, but the deeper cut came from what the public saw in her final words. There was no detachment, no artifice. She wrote of legacy, of sorrow, of memory being rewritten by politics, and in that honesty, she struck a nerve. Commentators didn't know whether to applaud her bravery or condemn her breach of decorum. But the one thing no one could do was ignore her. This wasn't a royal statement. It was a cry, and for once, it wasn't filtered. In the days that followed, the existence of the original draft became a symbol. It wasn't just a discarded speech, it was a relic of censorship, of what the palace expected women like Beatrice to be. Quiet, compliant, invisible. And now that illusion was broken. The buried draft, once forgotten in the bureaucracy of damage control, became the ultimate proof of what she had chosen not to be. She hadn't just written her truth, she had rejected theirs. But the real tremor came not from her words, but from who they threatened to expose next. It wasn't King Charles who first moved to silence Beatrice, it was Queen Camilla. According to leaked reports, Camilla's inner circle viewed Beatrice's defense as a direct affront to the reformed image of the crown. The two women never clashed in public, but behind palace doors, a quiet feud was ignited, one that would draw Anne, William, and even Catherine into its shadowy web. The warning signs were subtle at first: a cancelled appearance, a missed invitation, a sudden cooling in communications. But insiders say the message was unmistakable. Camilla was tightening her hold on the monarchy, and Beatrice's unexpected outburst had disrupted the carefully recalibrated image the Queen Consort had worked tirelessly to craft. In Camilla's eyes, Beatrice had not simply defended a disgraced father, she had threatened the future of a monarchy attempting to distance itself from scandal. And while King Charles remained the visible face of royal reform, those in the know pointed to Camilla's hand guiding decisions behind the scenes, particularly when it came to the ruthless speed at which Andrew's privileges were revoked. Beneath it all pulsed a deeper tension, one that had long simmered between the York bloodline and the rebranded Windsor power structure. The Yorks had always carried a complicated legacy, and now, with Camilla positioned firmly beside the throne, she was determined to prevent any York resurgence from undermining her position. According to one insider close to the household, Beatrice was deliberately excluded from a private Sandringham strategy session, a gathering that had always included senior royals by tradition. The message was unmistakable. She was no longer in the room where decisions were made. And yet, not everyone was on board with the silent freeze-out. Princess Anne, ever the cryptic stalwart of the crown, reportedly offered a stinging remark that raised more questions than answers. Silence is not always the dignified route. To some, it was a rebuke of Beatrice's decision to speak. To others, a quiet show of support. On the other hand, took a different route. Sources claim he issued a direct caution to his cousin: choose your battles carefully. This one could cost you everything. It was a warning from someone who understood the consequences of stepping out of line, but it also revealed the cracks beginning to form beneath the surface of royal unity. Catherine, as always, remained silent. But her silence was interpreted in dozens of ways. Some believed it was quiet solidarity, others suspected caution driven by her growing influence as the future queen. The press dissected every glance, every move, trying to determine where her loyalty fell. And while nothing was confirmed publicly, the whispers grew louder. Camilla was watching, and any sign of dissent, even from Catherine, could become a liability. Beatrice, once seen as peripheral to royal power, had now become a destabilizing force, one that challenged Camilla's narrative of unity and renewal. The feud between them was never spoken, never acknowledged, yet it shaped every move behind the scenes. And as courtiers began choosing sides, it became clear that Camilla's grip on the monarchy was no longer absolute. Fault lines had begun to appear, and Beatrice was standing directly at one of them, unafraid to press. As these invisible battle lines hardened, Beatrice found herself forced to choose between retreat or full confrontation. Beatrice wasn't alone, but she wasn't fully supported either. Princess Eugenie, her sister, offered a whisper of comfort. Zara Tyndall, blunt and unfiltered, issued a warning. In this internal storm, even cousins became cautious, each aware that siding too openly with Beatrice might provoke the crown's quiet wrath. These conversations, once private, now reveal a network of fear and fractured loyalties. At the core of Beatrice's rebellion stood not just her convictions, but the weight of choosing between family love and royal conformity. Eugenie, the one person who might have stood beside her publicly, hesitated. According to palace sources, she was deeply torn not because she disagreed, but because she feared losing her own fragile footing in the royal framework. The sisters spoke late into the night, several times, in conversations described as deeply emotional but inconclusive. Eugenie offered empathy, even sorrow, but ultimately stopped short of standing beside her sister when the moment demanded public courage. That silence lingered more loudly than any words could have. Others were far less gentle. Zara Tyndall, never known for courtly diplomacy, reportedly told Beatrice during a tense family moment at Balmoral, whose own position straddled the line between royal formality and private life. The message was simple: survival meant silence. Louise Windsor, still carefully guarded by the palace and seen by many as the next generation's safest figurehead, refused to offer any comment during a royal luncheon that quickly turned into a whispered war zone. Her refusal was interpreted by some as cowardice and by others as wisdom. Either way, Beatrice felt it. Every sidestep, every avoidance, added to the quiet isolation closing in around her. Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, reportedly attempted to act as a bridge, reaching out discreetly to Beatrice in hopes of calming the tensions. But Beatrice, now hardened by weeks of strategic cold shoulders and political manipulation, shut the door firmly. According to one source, Beatrice replied, "There's nothing to mediate when the decision has already been made without me." In that sentence, the pain bled through. She wasn't asking for understanding, she was demanding recognition. She would not play their game. But that choice came at a cost. The royal inner circle, already fractured by the lingering tremors of the Harry and Meghan fallout, now found itself staring at a familiar pattern. The divide, the whispers, the shifting allegiances. It wasn't just the Sussexes anymore. It was the Yorks. And while Beatrice hadn't fled to another continent, her moral and emotional separation from the crown felt just as profound. What made it even more chilling was the sense that history was repeating itself, only this time. The defector hadn't physically left, but ideologically, she was far from home. And then, just as tensions reached their breaking point, a new layer was added to the chaos. A document surfaced. Not a public letter, not a press leak, but a buried internal briefing marked confidential, detailing a past incident in which Beatrice had challenged protocol over her father's treatment years earlier. The document suggested that Beatrice's current rebellion was not impulsive, but long-standing. This wasn't a sudden break. It was a reckoning that had been simmering for years, and now, the palace had a paper trail they could no longer bury. But then came the night that changed everything, the leak no one could contain, and the line that Beatrice crossed without turning back. At 1:14 a.m., a call was made and recorded. A private conversation between Beatrice and an unnamed royal advisor has been leaked. In it, her frustration, fear, and fury boil over. It is a confession, a warning, and a prophecy all in one. But how did it get out? And who wanted the world to hear the true extent of Beatrice's rebellion? The audio didn't leak through a tabloid. It came from a secure but compromised channel, a copy sent to a royal archivist for record-keeping, which somehow found its way to a journalist with deep ties to the monarchy's shadow network. The voice on the tape was unmistakably Beatrice's, frayed, raw, and barely holding back years of suppressed anguish. The timestamp alone sparked alarm. The night before her public statement. For those within the palace, it confirmed their worst fear: her decision wasn't an emotional misstep. It was premeditated. The conversation revealed just how cornered Beatrice felt by the people she once trusted. "They want me to pretend I never had a father," she said, her voice cracking under the weight of betrayal, "to wear the crest and carry the smile while they erase him right in front of me." But it wasn't just sorrow. It was strategy. As the call unfolded, her words took on a darker implication, one that froze listeners in their tracks. She hinted at something locked away. A file. A collection of documents Prince Andrew had kept for insurance, as she called it. And then came the line that lit the media on fire. "If they push me further, he'll release it." And then it's not just about him anymore. It wasn't a threat. It was a reveal. Suddenly, the scandal was no longer just about Andrew. It became about who else might be implicated, and why the palace had moved so aggressively to silence Beatrice before she could allude to it further. An internal investigation was launched immediately, but weeks passed, without a single confirmed source. No one claimed responsibility for the leak. No staffer was dismissed. No official reprimands were issued. The silence was deafening, and in that vacuum, speculation thrived. Some whispered that a disgruntled aide released the recording in a final act of loyalty to Beatrice. Others believed it came from inside the firm itself, a veiled warning from someone else within the system who feared the consequences of what Beatrice had threatened to reveal. Whatever the truth, the leak did what Beatrice's statement alone could not. It reopened the public debate about Prince Andrew's downfall and reframed it through the eyes of a daughter fighting not just for her father's name, but against a palace machine that punishes memory. Newspapers debated whether Beatrice had crossed a line or drawn a necessary one. Broadcasters dissected every syllable. And once again, the monarchy found itself at the center of a cultural storm, not because of what it had done, but because of what it had buried. The public, now more curious than ever, turned its focus to the one thing Beatrice had left hanging in the air: the file. What was in it? Who was named? And why had the palace gone to such lengths to shut her down before she could utter those two explosive words? What was this mysterious file? And why was it powerful enough to make even the crown pause? For years, rumors swirled that Prince Andrew kept a private archive, documents he believed could protect him if things ever turned truly dire. Now, that archive, known only to a few as the Northwood File, has become the center of palace dread. And Beatrice, knowingly or not, has drawn attention to its existence. The name alone was enough to trigger alarm. Northwood. A modest estate on the fringes of royal estate mapping, but one that insiders say housed something far more potent than property paper. Correspondence. Notes not shared with palace officials. Legal communications. Personal letters. Some speculated the file was nothing more than a myth, an insurance fantasy conjured by a desperate duke. But others, particularly those once close to Andrew, insisted it was real, and worse, it contained details not just about his own dealings, but those of other senior royals past and present. Embarrassing exchanges, strategic lobbying, events never meant for the public eye. And now, the veil had slipped. The moment Beatrice's voice on the leaked recording even hinted at the existence of such a cache, a scramble erupted behind the walls of Buckingham and Clarence House. Emergency meetings were held at dawn. Advisors briefed the king with urgency. Communications staff were instructed to prepare reactive statements in case of hostile media action. The fear wasn't rooted in Andrew's past alone, it was that Beatrice's defiance had inadvertently exposed a ticking time bomb. If this file did exist, and if even a sliver of it surfaced, the entire house of cards could start trembling. Sources say the Northwood File, if confirmed, was never just about protecting Andrew. It was leverage. A whispered threat that, should he be pushed too far, others would fall with him. It's why some insiders believe the palace's aggressive approach to Beatrice began to soften in tone shortly after the leak. Not because they sympathized, but because they feared escalation. Suddenly, the line between royal daughter and blackmailer became dangerously blurred. Conservative columnists accused Beatrice of coercive defiance. Loyalists accused her of weaponizing family pain. She denied everything. Firmly, publicly. "I do not know what is in my father's possession," she stated through a new, personally retained legal spokesperson. But the damage was done, because now, the story wasn't just about Beatrice defending Andrew. It was about what she might unintentionally unleash. The monarchy, desperate to maintain continuity and calm, faced a problem it couldn't control: implication. As long as the file's contents remained unknown, every senior figure became a suspect in the court of public opinion. The mystery was more dangerous than any admission. Journalists began requesting legal access to past court filings. Republican activists reignited calls for full transparency around royal communications, and even Parliament began murmuring about future scrutiny. The final, most chilling whisper came from a former palace aide who had worked in the communications office under the late Queen. Speaking anonymously, they warned, There is one document, one item in that file that would force a total review of the current succession if it ever saw daylight. No elaboration, no confirmation, just one sentence that turned a political scandal into a constitutional minefield. But as the monarchy scrambled behind closed doors, it was the public who delivered the next blow, a rallying cry neither the palace nor Beatrice expected. As Beatrice's words echoed across the kingdom, so too did the voices of a divided public. Crowds gathered at royal events, some chanting her name, others decrying her as complicit. Social media turned into a war zone, but one unexpected gesture from a former royal brought the entire moment into shocking new territory. The monarchy, once the immovable symbol of unity, now found itself at the mercy of something far more unpredictable: public emotion. For decades, minor royals like Beatrice had existed in the periphery of national attention, quietly fulfilling ceremonial duties. But now, her name was on every front page. Polling agencies scrambled to measure sentiment, and what they found stunned them. The country was almost perfectly split: those who hailed her as a brave daughter speaking uncomfortable truths, and those who saw her as dangerously naive, possibly even manipulative. It was rare for someone so far down the line of succession to become the face of such a polarizing storm. But Beatrice wasn't fading, she was rising. Outside Buckingham and Windsor, a rare sight emerged. Protest. Some came to show solidarity, waving placards bearing slogans like, "You don't erase blood," and "Where is the truth?" Others arrived in outrage, calling for complete royal reform and accusing Beatrice of emboldening cover-ups. The streets were tense, charged with a kind of political energy more common in elections than family disputes. And online, the battleground exploded. Two hashtags took over the national discourse: number I stand with Beatrice and number end royal cover-up. Millions joined the digital clash, each tweet adding pressure to an institution already teetering. And then, Meghan Markle made a move. Without naming names, she posted a simple quote on her social media: "Truth doesn't tremble." The media seized on it instantly. Was it aimed at Beatrice? At the palace? Or both? Analysts speculated endlessly. Royal watchers debated whether it was support or a warning, but its timing, so close to the eruption, was no coincidence. Meanwhile, Prince Harry, ever cautious, remained publicly silent. But behind palace curtains, it was reported that he reached out to Beatrice, directly offering quiet support, though stopping short of any formal alliance. Their history was complicated, their present even more so. Former palace staffers soon began weighing in. Some, sympathetic to Andrew's earlier contributions and the emotional toll on his daughters, defended Beatrice's position. Others, enraged by what they saw as a reckless betrayal of royal decorum, blamed her for stirring a storm that could not be contained. The institution's inner divisions had now spilled into the open. What had begun as a personal act of loyalty had turned into a national reckoning. But amidst the chaos, whispers of something extraordinary began to circulate. King Charles, facing pressure from every angle, had called for a private meeting, not to scold, not to exile, but to listen. Beatrice's closest allies didn't see it coming. What had she said in that letter? What did she know from the Northwood whispers? What did the Crown fear enough to request a face-to-face? And in the most unexpected twist yet, Beatrice was summoned, not exiled. What happened in that closed-door encounter with King Charles stunned even the closest royal watchers. It wasn't rage. It wasn't fury. It was something colder: resolve. King Charles, behind closed doors, did not shout. He gave Beatrice a choice. What he said, and what she chose, would change not only her future but the future of the monarchy. And it proved that even in silence, power never lets go of control. Multiple palace sources later confirmed what many suspected but few could believe. The king had summoned Princess Beatrice to Clarence House under the strictest secrecy. No aides, no statements, no advisors. Just father and niece, monarch and minor royal, bound by blood but now separated by an invisible wall of loyalty and rebellion. The meeting lasted 47 minutes, not a second longer. And though no official statement was ever released, leaks began to pour out like cracks in a dam. The tone of the conversation was not hostile, but surgical. Charles did not rage. He did not plead. He presented an ultimatum, simple, devastating, final. She could remain within the royal fold, with all its guarded privileges and silent corridors, or she could continue her public defense and walk away from everything. The words cut deeper than any public rebuke could, because in that moment, the mask slipped. Beatrice wasn't being punished. She was being offered a choice that had only one answer if she wanted to remain visible. But her reply, reportedly delivered without a tremble, stunned even those closest to her. Then I was never in it, was I? No accusation, no theatrics, just clarity, the kind that shakes even the oldest walls of tradition. For 3 days, the palace said nothing. No press, briefings, no denials, no leaks from usual royal reporters, just silence. And then, a final image. Beatrice, leaving Clarence House alone. No security detail, no staff, eyes red, jaw clenched, head high. It was the image of someone who had just lost something, but not everything, because what she walked away from was not just a title, it was a lineage of silence, and she had chosen to break it. Royal events resumed the following week, as if nothing had happened. Garden parties, public appearances, smiling portraits, but one absence echoed louder than any presence: Beatrice. Her name, scrubbed from the guest lists. Her seat, left unassigned. Her silence, now louder than her words. And then came the lingering question: where was the file? The Northwood archive. The supposed leverage her father once held close. It hadn't surfaced. Not yet. But whispers grew. Journalists dug deeper. Former staffers became more emboldened. And within the palace, a quiet dread began to spread, because what if Beatrice had walked away with more than just her dignity? And with that, the crown may have silenced a princess, but it may have awakened a storm that no one can control. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.